A tourist wearing a shirt that read, "I'm the king here," boldly took the hat off a guardsman, thinking he could get away with it. The crowd froze, but the guardsman's next move left everyone holding their breath. What happened next? The sun barely pierced through the grey clouds typical of London, casting a faint light over the square in front of Buckingham Palace. Tourists flocked to the gates, their colourful umbrellas and cameras glinting in the morning light. As always, the crowd's attention was fixed on the motionless figures of the royal guards, who seemed to be carved from stone. One of them, William Carter, stood at his post, tall and statuesque, embodying discipline itself. His face remained impassive, despite the constant stream of jeers. "Hey guard, smile mate! Turn this way, I'm filming you!" It was his 8th hour on his feet, but William was used to such shows. To most tourists, he was just another attraction, like the red telephone booths and double-decker buses. But for William, his duty was a matter of honor. He took pride in wearing the uniform that symbolized centuries-old traditions, and knew that his responsibility was to rise above any provocations. The crowd grew larger, and amidst the throng, William noticed something unusual. A man, about 35 years old, wearing a bright t-shirt that read, "I'm the king here," and ripped jeans, drew attention with his loud laughter. His companions, 3 equally boisterous tourists, egged him on. "Go on, Jason, show these soldiers who the real king is." Jason, clearly reveling in his role, raised his hand as if commanding the crowd and strutted toward William with a cocky smile. "Well, Mr. Immovable," he began with exaggerated seriousness, "let's see if you're a real person or just a robot." The crowd fell silent. Some pulled out their phones, anticipating what would happen next. People love moments like these, when someone dares to do what they never would. Jason stopped a few steps away from William, raised his index finger, and began making mocking gestures, as if conducting an invisible orchestra. "Hey, you! Yes, you, statue! Care to wave at your king?" William didn't flinch. His gaze remained fixed straight ahead, as protocol demanded. But deep down, he could feel tension rising. This wasn't the first time tourists had tried to provoke a reaction from him, but Jason's audacity felt particularly grating today. "What's the matter? Are you deaf? A robot, huh? Oh, I know how to get you moving," Jason shouted, laughing uproariously. The laughter of his companions was louder than the crowd's reaction. Most spectators seemed more embarrassed than entertained. A woman in the front row, wrapped in a plaid scarf, muttered under her breath, "Shameful. No respect for culture." But Jason clearly saw himself as the star of the show. With a theatrical flourish, he yelled, "London! Are you seeing this? This is the show you deserve!" At this point, the crowd was divided. Some cheered Jason on, laughing and clapping. Others looked at William with admiration, marveling at his patience. And then there were those who openly disapproved of the scene unfolding before them. For Jason, however, the guard was merely part of the decor, and he was determined to entertain the audience further. "Hey, Mr. Immovable, show us some reaction. Or do you think your hat makes you special?" Those words hung in the air like a challenge. The crowd held its breath. Even Jason's friends seemed to sense he was going too far. The crowd outside Buckingham Palace had grown, drawn like a wave by the noise of Jason's antics. People seemed to forget the morning chill, their attention fixed on the scene. Phones were out, recording the spectacle, some out of curiosity, others clearly hoping for a viral clip. "All for the likes," thought one elderly spectator, standing slightly apart from the rest. Jason, aware of the attention, leaned into his role even more. His smug grin widened, and his gestures became more flamboyant. He stepped closer, standing mere inches from William, who remained as still as a statue. "All right, Mr. I'm so important," Jason announced, waving theatrically. "If you can't entertain us, I'll put on a show myself." The crowd held its breath. Many thought, he won't dare. But Jason seemed determined to prove them wrong. In 2 quick steps, he reached out and grabbed the guard's bearskin hat. Seriously? Did he really just do that? Was the collective thought of everyone watching. Holding the bearskin in his hands, Jason glanced triumphantly at the crowd, expecting applause. He failed to notice how one of his friends turned bright red with embarrassment. Even his most supportive companions began glancing toward the exits. "Well, folks, what do you think?" Jason shouted, attempting to put the hat on his head. The hat, naturally far too large for his average-sized head, made him look ridiculous, almost clownish. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but it wasn't the reaction Jason had hoped for. "Are you serious?" came an indignant voice from the edge of the crowd. It was the elderly woman in the plaid scarf. "That's just beyond disrespectful." Jason pretended not to hear her. He leaned closer to his friends, still displaying the hat. "So, how do I look? Fits me, right? Maybe a new trend?" "You'd do better to head home and try trending there," someone muttered loudly enough for others to hear. Meanwhile, William remained motionless. Only the faintest movement of his jaw betrayed his feelings in that moment. His gaze stayed fixed ahead, but it was clear that inside, something was boiling. The crowd began murmuring. Some were openly outraged. "This is utterly disrespectful. The Royal Guard is a symbol of our culture." Others marveled at the guard's composure. "Just look at him. How does he stay so calm?" Of course, there were still those who admired Jason. "Come on, he's just joking. Can't people lighten up a bit?" The scene was turning into a farce, but one with a bitter edge. Jason seemed to believe himself the star of the show. In his mind, it was something like, "I'm a tourist. I pay money. I have rights." He turned to the crowd, holding the hat aloft, and began taking selfies as though he were at a carnival. Shot after shot, he posed with the hat, completely oblivious to how ridiculous he looked. The crowd, meanwhile, was tense, sensing the boundary had been crossed. "Will someone stop this clown?" A young woman standing near a group of tourists muttered as they continued filming. But Jason was too engrossed in his star moment. Even his friends began averting their eyes, clearly sensing the situation had gone too far. "Hey, Jason, maybe that's enough?" one of them muttered hesitantly. "Enough? Are you kidding? This is the best day of my life," Jason shouted, adjusting the hat. "And this is the best thing you can do with your life? Really?" You might want to ask Jason. But don't worry, dear spectators. Fate had a lesson in store for him that he would never forget. As the murmur of the crowd grew louder and cameras continued recording every movement, something in the air shifted. It was the kind of moment when you know tension is about to reach its peak, and it seemed that William felt it too. He did exactly nothing, but this nothing was louder than any word that could have been spoken at that moment. The crowd, half laughing and half outraged just moments before, suddenly fell silent. Something in the air had changed. William made a single step forward, just one step, not more, not less, but at that moment it felt like a giant stride, shattering Jason's fragile confidence. A ripple went through the crowd. Gasps of astonishment broke the stillness as people whispered among themselves, "He moved! Is that even allowed?" William, his head held high, raised his right arm and pointed firmly to the ground in front of him. His movement was precise, deliberate, like the mechanism of a finely tuned clock. "Put the hat down." The words, low and cold as steel, reverberated through the square. Even the loudest teenagers in the back rows went silent. Jason froze, still clutching the bearskin hat as if it had suddenly become a burning coal. His smug grin faltered, replaced by something resembling unease. "And if I don't?" Jason retorted weakly, his tone feigning bravado. "What are you going to do, robot?" William's eyes remained steady. There was no anger, no irritation, only an unshakable calm that spoke of someone who stood for something far greater than himself. It was the look of a man who knew he would not be broken. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, but had taken on a new tone. "He's completely right. This tourist is disgusting. And that guard, look at him. What patience." Jason's bravado began to crumble. Where he'd been the self-proclaimed king just moments ago, basking in the crowd's attention, he now found himself alone, surrounded by disapproving eyes. His hands, still gripping the hat, trembled slightly. Okay, calm down," he muttered, attempting to sound nonchalant. Slowly, he removed the hat from his head, his movements stiff and awkward. "Put it down!" Someone in the crowd shouted, earning a wave of approving murmurs. Under the mounting pressure of the crowd's stares and his own growing shame, Jason bent down reluctantly and placed the hat on the ground. Tension reached its peak. Everyone held their breath, waiting for what would happen next. William didn't rush. He paused. A brief but powerful pause that made the moment feel monumental. Then, with careful precision, he bent down, picked up the hat, and gently dusted it off, as though every detail mattered. The crowd erupted in applause. Some people cheered, while others called out in admiration. "What professionalism! That's the real deal. Absolute class." As William carefully placed the hat back on his head, the act seemed almost symbolic, a reclaiming of dignity, tradition, and authority. He straightened up, adjusting the hat with perfect precision, and resumed his stance, as solid and unmoving as a monument. Jason stood rooted to the spot, his earlier triumph turned to humiliation. Even his friends had drifted away, distancing themselves from him. The crowd began to voice their opinions more openly now. How embarrassing for that tourist! And what an example of composure by the guard! That's true honor. Everyone watching could sense that William had just reminded them of something greater. Respect for tradition, discipline, and the power of self-restraint. Jason, on the other hand, had become a cautionary tale for those who thought boundaries could be crossed without consequence. Somewhere in the background, the elderly woman in the plaid scarf spoke once more. "That's how you handle it. Restraint is stronger than any mockery." The crowd slowly began to disperse, murmuring in awe and respect. William returned to his post, as steadfast and dignified as before. Yet now, his figure seemed to carry more than just the weight of tradition. It embodied the triumph of justice and composure. The incident at Buckingham Palace didn't end with the applause. In fact, it was only the beginning. One of the spectators closest to the action had uploaded a video to social media before the crowd had even dispersed. The footage was clear and powerful. A smug tourist posing foolishly with a stolen guardsman's hat, and the guard's calm but commanding response, reclaiming dignity with a single gesture and a few words. The video went viral in hours. Captions ranged from sarcastic, "When you're too dumb to respect tradition," to more serious, "Ban tourists like this from entering the UK." Comments poured in by the thousands. "This is why we lose respect worldwide," lamented one user under the handle @LondonPride. "That guard is a true hero. What patience," praised another. "Someone give that tourist his clown nose to match the hat," quipped yet another. The most popular moment from the video was Jason's face the instant he realized he had lost. That image became a meme almost overnight. One popular caption read, "When you realize the joke's on you." But the real fallout for Jason went beyond online mockery. The next morning, he received a notice from the local police, summoning him to give a statement about his behavior. Seated across from a stern officer, Jason looked deflated. Gone was the bravado he had displayed at Buckingham Palace. "Do you understand that your actions could be classified as public disorder?" the officer asked, his tone sharp. "Yes," Jason mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "You also showed blatant disrespect for a national symbol, which has sparked public outrage. You will be required to issue a formal apology." Jason had no choice but to comply. Later that day, a video appeared on social media, featuring him in a much humbler light. Sitting before the camera, he attempted to sound sincere. "I deeply regret my actions. What I did was disrespectful, and I understand that I crossed a line." The public response to his apology was mixed. "Too little, too late. He only apologized because he got caught," one user wrote. "At least he admitted he was wrong." "That's something," said another. Meanwhile, for William, the day continued as usual. He resumed his duties, steadfast and unyielding, a symbol of discipline and honor. As he stood at his post, a young boy approached him, holding his mother's hand. "Sir, you're a real hero," the child exclaimed, gazing at him with wide-eyed admiration. William gave the slightest of nods, maintaining his composure. It was a moment no one recorded, but one that stayed in the hearts of those who witnessed it. From a distance, a voice from the crowd called out, "And that hat still looked ridiculous on him!" Laughter rippled through the square, lightening the mood. But this time, the joke wasn't on the guard. It was on the man who had dared to challenge the unshakable. The incident became a lasting memory, not just for those present but for everyone who saw the video. It was a reminder that dignity, discipline, and respect are timeless values, and that even in a world of mockery, they can stand tall.